What did we learn from 2020? And what can we carry into 2021 that we learned? And what do we want to forget all about? Well, that's coming up right now. Welcome to the first edition of Live with Sequoia Fund for 2021. I'm Russ Siegel. I'm the Executive Director of the Sequoia Fund, and I'm glad to have you with us today. We're going to be looking back at 2021, some things that you may be aware of and some things that you may not be aware of, offering a little bit of perspective on what happened in 2020 and what we could expect for 2021. My brain is still in 2020, so I guess I'll be putting 2020 on my checks in March like I normally do. But I want to talk a little bit about some trends. And one of the big trends that we saw in 2020 was obviously that e-commerce exploded. You could say that we were headed there anyway, but in some sectors, e-commerce was up between 35 and 45%. So we were on this trajectory. We were growing in e-commerce year over year, and everybody was planning for that. UPS, FedEx, anybody who handles packages, they were preparing for a steady increase. Nobody was expecting the explosion that COVID prompted. So everybody's at home, everybody's shopping online, and we're not going to see that change this year. Yes, shopping online increased, but not to the degree that it would cover the losses in traditional retail. Part of the reason is that a lot of traditional retailers were behind the curve on e-commerce. They just weren't ready to sell online. And it's unfortunate that some are still not there. But we're here to stay, folks. Is your business online? Are you able to sell online? We're going to talk more about that as we go. As long as we're talking about online, let's talk about everybody's favorite kid on the block these days, Zoom. You know, Zoom started out as just this really easy to use online meeting and webinar platform. I've been using Zoom since it was a toddler, and it works really, really well. I have used probably every online meeting and webinar platform out there except for BlueJean. If you've used BlueJean, pop a comment in there. Let's talk about that at some point. But by a long shot, Zoom is the easiest thing I've found to use. And, you know, they were here. They were dealing with this number of customers every day. And then all of a sudden they saw this explosion of customers, and they got some bad press for that because they weren't ready. Their servers crashed. People were getting Zoom bombed in their meetings. In other words, bad actors were popping up where they shouldn't, creating havoc, doing things they shouldn't be doing, creating some embarrassing moments and things. And they got some bad press for that. They fumbled. They fumbled early on in the year. But what did they do? They picked up the ball and they ran it in for a touchdown. They expanded their capability. They listened to their customers about their concerns. They found out what was wrong and they fixed it. They upped their security game. They made it easier to use. They made breakout rooms easier to use. There was just so many things going on there. And you could tell Zoom was really listening to their customers. So are you listening to your customers? Are you listening to your best customers? Well, there are a lot of us who can't listen to our customers right now because we're closed. One of the glaringly obvious things that happened in 2020 was that businesses struggled mightily to comply with what seemed like an ever-changing list of arbitrary rules and capricious regulations. I mean, we had restaurants in major cities that were told you have to limit seating to 30% capacity. Okay, that's fine. And then they said, no, you can't seat people indoors at all. Indoor seating is out. So you have to move them out on the street. And so the businesses did. They put tables out on the street. And then the rules changed. And they said, you've got to separate these people by some sort of partition outside. And they did. And then, no, you've got to put them in fully enclosed areas outside. So now we have places in America and across the world where people are eating indoors, outdoors. And that seems a little crazy, but folks, that's where we are. The point here is that time and time again, the businesses that could, if they could financially support it, they bent over backward to comply. Businesses have no incentive to allow people to get sick, whether it's from COVID or cholera. And so every single time the rules changed, they stepped up. Gyms stepped up. Home services businesses stepped up. Delivery companies stepped up. Restaurants, bars. In North Carolina, they now allow you to sell liquor as a takeaway. You can stop by the bar. You can pick up your mixed drink. Excuse me, your mixed drinks on the way home. Maybe I need a drink. But then the bars found out there were so many rules. Every drink has to be put in a plastic container, and it has to be sealed, and it has to have a seal over it. It has to have labels on it telling you that you have to be a certain age to buy alcohol, as if nobody knew. And they have to have the alcohol content. It has to have all of the ingredients labeled. And a lot of bars just said, we can't do that. But the ones that could did. Now, they're not seeing a lot of return on that, and some are not thinking that it's going to be worth it in the long run. They really need to be open because bars and a lot of other businesses, they're all about community. They're all about being together. And if you can mix your own drinks at home, you can. So last year was very good for the booze industry, not necessarily the bar industry. Twitter announced that their employees can now work from home forever. Don't come back to the office. I've read articles that say we have to get back to the office. People are just not productive. I've also read articles that say nobody will ever go back to the office. Why would you ever work in an office again? Neither one of those absolutes are true. You have to decide what works for your environment. Where do your people need to be? At Sequoia Fund, we found that people are very productive working remotely. And so we may continue some form of work from home arrangement even after things open back up, because it does save people time. I've got an hour-long commute back and forth every day, 30 minutes one way, 30 minutes another. That's an hour a day I can be working. And so, yeah, there's a lot of reasons we need to be in the office, but there are a lot of good things that can come from working from home. We got to make those decisions. Back in August, there was an organization called DarkSide. It's a ransomware group of hackers. Ransomware is when they get into your system, they steal your data, and they hold it until you pay them. A lot of times they want to be paid in Bitcoin because you can't trace it. They don't want to be paid in sacks of cash. So this graphic is actually not accurate. They want to be paid in untraceable currencies. And as soon as they get the money, you would hope a lot of them just release the data. They turn it back over to you. It doesn't always make it easy to get the data integrated back into your system and working again, as the Eastern Band of Cherokee found out. The tribal government was hacked a while back. But what makes this group interesting is that in December, their Grinch heart grew 3 sizes, and they donated part of the money they stole from big corporations to small charities and nonprofits. Now, Sequoia Fund is a nonprofit organization. We don't want ill-gotten gains. We don't want any stolen money. So I kind of feel bad for the companies or for the organizations that got some of this money, because they don't really know where it came from, or may not know where it came from. Here's what's important about this. If they can hack into Wells Fargo, Bank of America, the FBI, yeah, people hack into the CIA and the FBI. They spend all their time trying to hack into big companies that have a lot of security. Amazon. Eventually, they're going to find out that that's a losing game, because yes, they can take from them quickly, but they're going to get caught. They're going to get found out, because these companies have protocols and systems in place to find that kind of activity. But if I were a bad guy with good skills, which I don't, by the way, there's no chance of me ever hacking into anything. I can barely use an ATM machine. But if I were a bad guy with a little bit of tech skill, I'd be hacking into you. I'd be hacking into your bed and breakfast, your hotel, your restaurant, your retail store. I would be hacking into places that are not likely to catch me. I would be hacking into businesses that have a lot of customer data. And at Sequoia Fund, we do. We have customer data. That's worth more to a hacker than the money they can take out of your bank account. They can get a quick hit out of your bank account, but then the money's gone. They can figure out a way to hit 1,000 of your customers and never have it traced back to you or them. Now, that's bad news. What are you doing this year to beef up your cyber security? Are you carrying cyber security insurance, data loss insurance? What are you doing to make sure this doesn't happen to you? It's not cheap, but it could be priceless. If you have flown anytime in the past and you've been able to be on one of these birds, the 747, a lot of these are being taken out of service. Airlines are pulling them off of routes because they're getting older. You know, some of the youngest out there are 30 years old. But in the cargo world, they're still out there. And believe it or not, they still operate on floppy disks. Not the little floppy disks, mind you, the big dishcloth-sized floppy disks, the ones that gave it the name floppy disk. Once a month, a technician climbs in the aircraft, pops in a floppy disk, and updates the navigation system. And why does this matter to small business? Yes, it's a little bit scary to think that a complex machine flies you at nearly 600 miles an hour or over 600 miles an hour through the air, 35,000 feet on a floppy disk. But at some point, Boeing looked at the cost-benefit analysis of using a floppy disk versus upgrading all of their aircraft to the latest and greatest whiz-bang technology. And they decided it just wasn't worth it. Look, airline navigation, aviation is not the same as roads. You can go on vacation for 2 weeks and come home, there's a new intersection in your town, or there's a new road built in your town. I mean, obviously it's not going to happen that fast, but it happens much faster than changes in aviation. So why bother? The lesson there is that we don't always have to have the latest and greatest. I know there were a lot of fights over the latest PlayStation and Xbox machines this year for Christmas. There always are. But you don't have to fight for the latest and greatest technology to make your business run well. In fact, Google has committed to making its Google Suite, their word processor, their presentation software, their spreadsheet software, all of the stuff that runs in Google now will now run in Chrome on very old PCs. So if you have a 10-year-old PC that is on its last legs, maybe it's just barely limping along, if you can load Chrome to that machine, which is easy to do, it's not a big program, it's a very small snippet of code, but when you load Chrome on that machine, now you have this entire suite of tools that you can use for your business. So you may not have to upgrade to the latest and greatest computer to make your business run. And we found that there were no computers to be had in 2020 because of supply chain issues. So don't throw out that old dinosaur laptop or desktop. Add Chrome to your browser, jump in there and start using all of these free tools that Google makes available to you. Some other tools that we found that were coming available in 2020 was that banks were getting more cozy with small businesses. Look, interest rates are really low right now. Banks are not making a ton of interest as income. And so they have to look to fee income. And one of the ways to do that is to take on back office services for you. They're handling payroll. They're handling benefits administration. They're handling your accounts payable. And if they're doing that for you, you're less likely to run down the street and change banks for a 0.5% better interest rate on a loan. They're going to lock you in. Now, this is good news for small businesses. It's not necessarily good news for small business services. So if you're a small business service, if you're an accounting service, a bookkeeping service, you need to up your game to compete with the banks, because the banks are turning it on hot and heavy right now. And you need to make sure you're stepping up to the plate. Another thing that we found in 2020 is that people will communicate more with you. They are more comfortable communicating with you through chat, instant message, direct message, or text than from picking up the phone. They're tired of picking up the phone and not getting an answer. They're tired of sending an email and never getting a reply. I remember when my daughters first got a cell phone. I thought texting was the craziest thing in the world. Why would anybody ever send a text when you could just pick up the phone and make a call? And I could call them 14 times, never get a response. I could send one text, in about 3 seconds, I got a reply. And I realized this is the way this new generation is going to want to communicate. My wife teaches at a community college and has battled this for years. And she keeps telling students, check your school email, check your college email, because this is the way we communicate. And I've been trying to tell her for a long time, it's not going to be the way we communicate forever. Yes, it's the way businesses communicate, but more and more people want to communicate with businesses in quick little bites. Is there a way that they can text you? Do you have a chat function on your website so that when they go to your website, a little box pops up and says, how can I help you today? The travel service that we use, when there's an issue, I can get on an app. I can go right to the travel service and have them refund a ticket or change a ticket. And they do that almost instantaneously. It's very quick. I don't have to talk to anybody. Let's use airlines. Let's go back to the airlines for a second. Airlines actually have entire departments who do nothing but monitor Twitter. I've had airlines, the flights canceled. Everybody runs over to find a person. They want to get in front of a human. They want to stand in line and talk to a human. The smart ones will also get on the phone to the airline and try to talk to somebody. The really smart ones, though, will pull up the app. They'll pull up Twitter. They'll at American Airlines, or they'll at Delta Airlines. And I've gotten quicker response on social media and through their apps than through the phone. So you can't poo-poo that anymore. This is the way people are going to communicate. This is the way they want to deal with us, and we have to be able to step up. Augmented reality came to the forefront in 2020. Think Warby Parker with eyeglasses. You know, this graphic shows furniture in a room where the furniture is not. Augmented reality is not the same as virtual reality, where you're gaming and you're actually in motion and you're doing things. Augmented reality is a way for you to show that dress on your customer. They're going to send you a picture. You're going to send it back with the dress on the customer. Or what does that hat look like? If you sell specialty hats and they measure the circumference of their head and they send you that measurement, can you send them a picture of the hat so that they can hold it up and look at that hat on their head? Now you know exactly how that hat's going to look. You know it's going to fit because you've got the measurements, and you're sending out a hat. Well, Warby Parker can afford to send out 4 or 5 pairs of glasses, let you try them on, and send the rest back. You may not be able to afford to send 4 or 5 different hats. That's just an example. If you sell furniture, if you sell appliances, augmented reality is the way that people are going to see this. They don't want to walk into a showroom anymore and see those appliances standing in a line, just a big row of stoves, ovens, refrigerators and microwaves, dishwashers. They want to see it in their home. They want to know what this is going to look like on their body, in their home, in their life. So this is technology that is, it's here to stay. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about some trends that I think we need to seize on in 2021, and that's coming up right after this. I am extremely optimistic about 2021. Now, I know that a lot of small businesses have closed. I know that a lot of people have been laid off. I know that a lot of people are hurting. I don't want to discount that. But there are reasons to be optimistic. The reasons to be optimistic are that we are a media-driven society. And so everything that we see in the media is amplified 1,000 times. If there's one bad thing that happens, it hits every news station, and it's a week-long story. But if you look at real life doesn't have to be that way. And I've seen the people who have been affected step up and find ways to make their business run, to take care of their families, to take care of themselves. And part of the reason I'm really optimistic about 2021 is that there's a lot of pent-up demand. The demand for things is not going to go away. It might be affected by the way people can afford it, access it, but there's going to be demand. Let's take remodeling, for example. There are some things that look at ceramic tile, look at certain appliances. Those industries have been hit by COVID because they had to shut down. People worked in close proximity and they were out of work, which meant the supply chain was effectively killed for a while. And so we've got entire sectors that even if you want it, you can't buy it. But that's coming back. That's coming back. Those companies are figuring out ways to handle those things. In fact, I'm having some work done in the room next door. If you hear some beating and banging, it's because of our construction. One of the reasons I'm optimistic about pent-up demand is because people are actually saving money. They're paying down debt and they're saving money. This was to the dismay of the federal government when they handed out those first $1,200 stimulus checks. They were hoping people would run out and spend that money, and they didn't. They paid down debt. They paid down student debt. They paid down credit card debt, consumer debt, and they put the money in the bank for a rainy day. They said, we don't know how long it's going to be raining, so we're putting that money away. And they're figuring out ways to cut back and to save money. Savings right now is at an all-time high. Yeah, it's really sad that it took an event like this to get people thinking about putting money in the mattress for a rainy day. But here we are. Now, there's some historic things that make me very optimistic, some things that we know from past events in history that just have me reeling for what's going to happen in 2021. Number one is we know that the businesses that do survive events like this, Great Depression, subsequent recessions, the pandemic of 1918, businesses that survive these types of events come out of them stronger. They never go back to where they were before. They always rise to a different level on the other side of these events. Again, historically, we know that to be true. So if you're still around, if you're still in business, there's a good chance that at this point you're going to survive, and you're going to survive even longer and be stronger for it. Part of that is that you've figured out ways to cut back. You've gotten very lean. You've figured out ways to get creative. You've figured out ways to stay in touch with your customers, to get in touch with your best customers. And unfortunately, some of your competition has gone away. Maybe not even direct competition, but sometimes the indirect competition goes away. And that can bode well for you if you're still around. Something else that we know historically true is that businesses that start up in this environment or a similar environment do better coming out of it because it makes you lean. It makes you creative. You have to be creative in this environment. There are not unlimited resources. There are not unlimited customers. So you have to be very careful about how you do things. You have to be prudent. And businesses that go through this process and they go through the startup in this environment just tend to do great. So what we also know in this type of climate is that something is at play here that Joseph Schumpeter, an economist in 1942, coined the term creative destruction. Capital does not disappear. Entire industries go bankrupt, but the capital doesn't disappear. It sometimes shifts, it sometimes hides, it's hard to find, but it doesn't disappear. What happens, though, with creative destruction, and there's argument that what we've been through is not creative destruction, it's just been destruction. But what happens with that process is that capital is free then to move to more successful businesses, more successful products, services, sectors. And so you might have had a shoe store in town it was the only game in town. People hated the guy who ran the shoe store. He's just a nasty, crabby guy. But he was the only place to buy shoes. Well, then you had Zappos come along. You could order shoes online, and now they're part of Amazon. But maybe now's the time you open up a real nice, well-run hometown shoe store. Because the crabby guy, if people have a choice of spending money with him or not spending money with him, they're probably at this point not going to spend the money with the Grinch. So, capital is going to find a way to flow to more customer-friendly endeavors and more productive endeavors. So, I don't know what that means for your business. It could mean that you're Mr. Crab and you need to rethink some things, or that you have an opportunity to step in where there are some gaps that didn't exist this time around. Now, one of the things that I think we need to do better this year is let's figure out a way to stop relying on social media. It's January 2021. This whole thing really got started back in March of 2020. I still contact restaurants today that the only way to contact them is by phone, or to walk in, or to walk up to the window, or to drive through. There's no way to contact them. And if you're on social media and that is your only online presence, it's rented property. It's rented property. There is no way you're going to be able to survive on rented property, because you can be kicked out of rented property. If you're on Facebook and that's your only online presence, Mark Zuckerberg can kick you out of his backyard. He makes the rules. You need to have a website, and you need to do that now. If you've not already, there are some ways to do that. We can help you. There's some other professionals out there that can help you. It's time, folks. I also heard businesses in 2020 say, we pivoted. We made a pivot. We're online now. No. That's an extension of what you should have done 20 years ago. And in fact, some of the websites that are still out there look like they were built 20 years ago. I mean, my goodness, a lot of them are still using the same old HTML or the old coding that people used to use in the late 90s, early 2000s. It looks like you built your website in a drunken stupor where you just tripped across some HTML and there's the website. So if your website looks like this or something similar, or it hasn't been updated in a while, folks, it's time to step up. Part of the reason that we just don't have time to beef up our website or do a better job on social media. Look, if all you're doing on social media is putting in your weekly special, or on snow days, you're putting in, it's snow today, we have to be closed, or the owner's sick, we have to be closed. Nobody cares, because nobody sees that. You need your own property. Part of the reason we're not out there doing it is we got very myopic in 2020. Our field of vision went very narrow, and people started thinking about survival. They weren't really thinking about how to broaden their perspective, broaden their horizons, and overwhelm took over. When we got overwhelmed, we got busy. Maybe we cut back on staff. We cut back on the things that we're offering. And now we're in a place where we're working to be working. If you are busy, if busyness for you is a badge of honor, it's time to change. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to reprioritize some things for 2021 so that we can get out of this rut of just being busy. But I'm seeing this a lot. Home services, I'm going to go back to home services. If you're trying to find a roofer, a flooring provider, pest control, plumbing, electrical, you name it, it's hard to find these days because these folks are so busy. In fact, one economist that I follow speculated that in the first half of 2021, up to 75% of the calls to these business calls on the phone will go unanswered. And over 85% of the businesses that get the calls are going to be so busy, they're never going to bother to return the calls. Now, there's another statistic that close to 85% of the people who call you and don't get a response don't call back. They don't bother with you. They move on. They try to find someone else. So what can you do this year? A bigger and bigger chunk every year of your customers are calling you from a mobile device. They're calling you on a cell phone, and they want to be able to reach you, from their pocket, which means you can implement technology that if you can't answer the phone, pings them back with a text and says, "I'm sorry, I missed your call. What's a good time for me to reach you?" If you can do that, if you can start to implement some of that technology, I would rather somebody answer the phone and say, "Get lost," Joe's Plumbing, get lost, than to never get a call back, to never get a response. The opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is indifference. Your customers would rather you tell them to go jump in the lake than to never talk to them at all. So we've got to find a way around the overwhelm so that we can stay in communication with our customers. And all of this overwhelm took our focus away from relationships. At Sequoia Fund, we're going to be fine. We're going to come out on the other side of this. We've lost money on loans because we're deferring payments right and left. We're cutting fees. We're trying to do whatever we can to keep our customers in business and help you survive. And if your survival hinges on nickel and diming your customers for $5 here, 30 cents there, they're going to notice. But what are you doing to build relationships? Our focus right now is how do we get not just ourselves to the other side of this, but how do we get our clients to the other side of this? And how do we build those relationships? And when COVID is in the rearview mirror, what are people going to think about us? I want you to be saying that to yourself. When we get to the other side of this, what will our customers be saying about us? Are we the business that became the hero and took care of our customers? Or are they dying to find somebody else to do business with because they just can't stand us? Well, there are some things that we can do, and along that line, we just need to make it easier for people to reach us. Even if we're just going to pick up the phone and say, "Go jump in the lake. I don't have time for you." We have to make it easier for people to contact us, and it took us a long time at Sequoia Fund to get comfortable with the notion that our customers wanted to talk to us over Facebook Messenger. That's just not something that we did, but that's the way our customers wanted to communicate with us. And so, okay, now we've got some protocols. We get notifications. There are ways for us to keep up with that. We're trying to do a better job communicating with people on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube. Whatever way our customer wants to get in touch with us, we're going to find a way to respond to that. And I want you to be thinking, what are all the different ways people can communicate with you, and how can we make that easier? Answer the phone. Answer the phone. If you have to hire, if you're so busy that you can't answer the phone, maybe you have enough money to hire a virtual assistant. You can hire a virtual assistant down the street. You can hire a virtual assistant in the Philippines or in Bangladesh or in California or in Texas, wherever. Virtual means virtual. A lot of times you can find a virtual assistant who specializes in your industry. If you're in the real estate industry, there are virtual assistants who know your industry, and that's what they do. They'll answer the phone, they'll field questions, they'll become very familiar with your policies and procedures and your staff, and they'll handle all of that for you for a reasonable rate. I mean, you can pay anywhere from a few dollars an hour to several $1,000s a month, but you may need to look into something like a virtual assistant to help you answer the phone. Now is also a good time, back to that busyness thing. If you're just busy for the sake of being busy and you're so worn out that you can't keep up, maybe it's time to raise your prices. A lot of companies are doing this because as demand goes up, supply doesn't always meet that demand. And so to bring equilibrium back to the world, to bring balance to the force, you need to raise your prices. Would you rather work twice as hard for half as much money, or half as hard for twice as much money? Why not work a little less hard for about the same amount of money? And raising prices can help you do that. Now, raising prices can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. I suggest that you contact us. Let us either help you or put you in touch with one of the professional coaches and consultants that we work with to help you do that in a thoughtful way, because you don't want to turn your customers off by going too far. You also don't want to endanger your business by not going far enough. But raising your prices is definitely something that you can look at. Another thing is take the time to target your best products and services to your best customers. How much more money could we be making if we catered to the few people who know, like, trust, love, care about us, can't wait to preach us from the rooftop? They can't wait to tell their friends about us because they love us so much. They will buy anything that we have to sell, and they tell everybody what a great job we do for them. There are a lot fewer of those than there are of the other types of customers. So let's target them. Let's nurture our best customers. Let's build relationships with those best customers. And yet we spend a lot of time trying to coddle and please customers who want to beat us down on price, who are never satisfied with anything, and will return the product because there's a scratch on the box, which they will throw away 5 minutes after they open it. Who do you want to deal with? Michael Port wrote a book called Book Yourself Solid. And I love the illustration he uses in this book. And it is, think about your business as a club, an exclusive nightclub, and you have a red velvet rope. Who gets behind the red velvet rope? Who can come into that inner sanctum? It's probably not going to be the people who drive you crazy. It's probably the people who bring you energy, the people who bring you life, the people who love you and trust you and want to do business with you. Think about who's going to get behind your red velvet rope in 2021. We have to be mobile friendly this year. Again, people want to do business with you on one of these. And I know businesses, I can count on one hand the number of businesses that are running a complete business on the phone. No computer at all. No computer needed, but they're doing great. But people don't want to take this website and try to squeeze it down onto your phone. That's crazy. They want to be able to pull up a website on your phone or pull up even an app that just works really, really well. Last but not least, and I think this maybe goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. We've got to get back to the fundamentals of our business. Those of us who have time on our hands, we need to be learning. You need to be attending webinars. You need to be taking online courses. I listen to a lot of books. I subscribe to Audible. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I listen to podcasts. If you've never been in that world and you've not done any podcasts or listened to any podcasts, open your podcast app on your phone. It's built right in. If you have an iPhone, you can use Stitcher or Apple Podcasts, which used to be iTunes. Get in there and start looking for business podcasts, industry podcasts. You know, again, if you're in the real estate industry, there are plenty of real estate podcasts out there that will help you build your business. But now is the time, and there are absolutely no excuses. You need to have a good handle on your customers. You need to know them. You need to understand them. You need to know your numbers, and you need to have systems and processes in place that provide you with good data so that you can run your business making good decisions on the information you have. So that's all I've got for you today. I really thank you. I see that we don't have any comments here, so I'm going to go ahead and end it. But I want you to be thinking about how you can make 2021 a great year. I think there's a lot of potential out there. I'm seeing people they're not only changing their business, they're changing industries. And people, entrepreneurs will figure it out. Even if it can't be in the business that you used to be in, if you're an entrepreneur at heart, you're going to figure out ways to get by. You're going to figure out ways to make it work. And at Sequoia Fund, we hope that we can help you. I look forward to seeing you next time on Live with Sequoia Fund.